My name is Lena. I am 32 years old. I live in a medium-sized city, far from where I grew up. I moved here 7 years ago for love. That is the honest answer. I moved here because of a man named Marcus. Marcus was tall and funny and warm. He made me laugh like no one else. I was completely in love with him. I remember the day I decided to move here for him. I was in my parents' kitchen telling my mother about Marcus. She listened carefully, the way she always did. Then she said, "Lena, you sound like a woman who has already decided." She was right. I had already decided. I packed up my small apartment in 2 weekends and drove across the country with everything I owned in my car and a feeling in my chest like something was finally beginning. Those first months were beautiful. Marcus took me to every corner of the city. We walked for hours on Saturday mornings. He knew all the good coffee shops and the quiet parks and the streets where old buildings still had their original doors. He told me small facts about everything. He loved to know things and to share the things he knew. I loved to listen. We were very good together in those early months. Marcus and I were together for 3 years before he left. We had talked about marriage. We had talked about children. We had looked at apartment listings together and argued about which neighborhoods were best. I wanted to be near trees. He wanted to be near the center of things. We could not agree, but we kept looking anyway, because the disagreement was comfortable. It meant we were going somewhere together. We had small habits that I loved. Sunday mornings, we made pancakes. He made them badly, and we laughed about it every week. He never got better at pancakes. We watched films on Thursday evenings with takeout food. He always chose something I would not have chosen, and I always ended up liking it. These small weekly things made up the architecture of our life together. I did not know how much I depended on them until they were gone. And then, one Tuesday morning, I woke up and he was gone. He did not send a message. He did not call. He simply was not there anymore. His clothes were gone from the closet. His shoes were gone from the shelf by the door. His toothbrush was gone from the bathroom. Like he had planned it, like he had been thinking about it for a long time without telling me. For the first week, I called him every day. His phone rang and rang, then it stopped ringing. It went straight to voicemail. I left messages. I said, "Marcus, please call me." I said, "I need to know you are safe." I said, "Whatever happened, we can talk about it." He never answered. He never called back. He had simply disappeared from my life. His family knew nothing. Or they said they knew nothing. His mother cried on the phone when I called her. She said she had not heard from him either. She said she was worried too. His friends said the same thing. Nobody knew where Marcus had gone. Nobody knew why. I was left alone with absolutely no answers, and a heart that did not know how to function anymore. I drove to his office on the 3rd day. His colleagues looked at me with expressions I did not like. Something more careful than surprise. His manager said Marcus had resigned the week before, submitted his resignation by email, given 2 weeks' notice by email, and then not shown up for the 2 weeks. I sat in my car outside his office for a long time after that conversation. He had planned it. He had planned everything carefully and said nothing to me. The months after Marcus left were the hardest of my life. I could not sleep well. I could not eat well. I went to work, but I could not concentrate. My boss was patient with me for a while. My friends tried to help. They called often. They came to visit. They took me out for dinner. I was grateful for them, but the emptiness was still there inside everything. There is a particular kind of grief that comes from being left with no explanation. It is not clean grief, like losing someone to death. You grieve the person, but also the question. You turn the question over and over in your mind. That 2 a.m. What did I do? What did I not do? What did I not see? The question becomes its own companion, an unwanted one, but constant. I talked to a therapist for 6 months. Her name was Dr. Sorrel. She was a calm woman who wore the same blue scarf every week and never seemed surprised by anything I said. She helped me understand that I could stop turning the question over and not have an answer and still be okay. That was harder than it sounds. But she was patient, and I kept going back. After 6 months, I finally accepted that Marcus was not coming back. Not anytime soon, maybe not ever. I packed the things he had left behind into a box. A few books, a jacket, some small items. I put the box in the back of my closet. I could not throw it away, but I could not look at it either. So I hid it, and I tried to move forward. Moving forward was slow. The first year was about surviving, just getting through each day, paying rent, sleeping when I could. The second year was about slowly remembering who I was before Marcus. I used to paint. I stopped painting when we were together because he said the smell of paint bothered him. I started painting every weekend, small paintings at first, just shapes and colors, not good paintings, but mine. I put them on the walls of my apartment. They were not beautiful, but they were something I had made myself, and that felt important. My apartment started to look like a place I actually lived in, rather than a place I was surviving inside. She lived 3 streets away and came over most evenings in those first hard months. She did not always talk. Sometimes she just sat with me. She brought food and made sure I ate it. She watched films with me and pretended not to notice when I cried. She told me once that she was not going to tell me I was better off without him, because that would be a stupid thing to say when someone is in pain. She said she was just going to keep showing up. Instead, she did, every time. By the 3rd year after he left, I was doing better. I had a good job in a marketing company. I had a small but comfortable apartment. I painted on weekends. I had a small group of close friends. I was not happy exactly, but I was okay. And okay felt like something worth protecting, like a plant that was finally starting to grow again after a very long winter. That winter, I joined a painting class on Wednesday evenings, a small community studio 2 streets away. The other students were different kinds of people. A retired teacher, a young man who wanted to paint his grandmother's portrait, a woman about my age who was learning because she thought she should have a creative practice. We were not a natural group, but we were a friendly one. I looked forward to Wednesday evenings more than I expected. In the 4th year, I met someone. His name was Tom. Tom was kind and steady. He was not as exciting as Marcus had been, but he was reliable. He called when he said he would call. He showed up. We started dating slowly. He was patient with me. He knew I had been hurt before. He did not push. He just showed up. Consistently, every time. Tom had a dog named Biscuit, a medium brown dog with very soft ears. On our early dates, Tom brought Biscuit to the park. Biscuit ran ahead and came back and ran ahead again. Biscuit was enthusiastic about everything, every smell, every other dog. Tom said Biscuit had never met a stranger. I found it hard to be sad around Biscuit. That was Tom's quiet gift. He always brought the dog on the difficult days. Tom worked as an accountant. He was good at it and did not pretend it was exciting. He said numbers were calming and precision was satisfying. He said he liked that there was always a correct answer. I thought about this. I had been living with a question that had no correct answer for 3 years. The idea of correct answers was appealing. Tom was appealing. By the start of the 5th year, Tom and I were serious. We were talking about the future, carefully, tentatively, like people who have both been hurt before and do not want to go too fast. But we were moving forward together. I was starting to feel something I had not felt in a long time. I was starting to feel hopeful. Not the desperate kind, the quiet kind. We took a trip together that spring to a small town on the coast. We rented a tiny house with a garden. We walked along the water every morning before breakfast. Tom made coffee in the kitchen while I sat in the little garden and watched the day start. On the last morning, I sat there alone and felt something very simple and clear. I felt at peace. I sat there with my coffee and my peace, and I thought maybe this is it. Maybe this is what things are supposed to feel like. Then one Saturday morning in September, my doorbell rang. I was in my kitchen, drinking coffee. I was wearing an old sweater, and my hair was a mess. I was not expecting anyone. I went to the door and opened it, and there was Marcus, standing on my doorstep, 5 years older, a little thinner, but unmistakably him. My whole body went absolutely still. He said, "Hi, Lena." His voice was exactly the same. That voice I had not heard in 5 years. That voice I had replayed in my memory so many times. He said he needed to talk to me. He said there were things he needed to explain. He looked nervous. He looked sorry. He looked like a man who knew he had done something terrible and had been carrying it for a long time. I said nothing for a long moment. Then I said, "Marcus, it has been 5 years. He nodded. He said, "I know." He said he was sorry. He started to say something else, and then I noticed there were people behind him on the path. I looked past him. There was a woman standing a few steps back. She was holding the hand of a small girl. The girl was maybe 3 years old. The girl had Marcus's eyes. I saw it immediately, the same dark brown eyes, the same long lashes, the same small crease at the corner. When she looked around curiously at the door and the plants on my porch, she was his daughter. I did not need to be told. I knew it in my body the moment I saw those eyes. I looked at the woman. She was looking at the ground. She looked uncomfortable. She looked like someone who did not want to be there but had come anyway because it was necessary. Marcus turned and looked at her. He said, "Anna, this is Lena." He said it very quietly. Nobody moved. Nobody knew what to say. The little girl looked up at me with those curious dark eyes. I stepped back from the door. I said, "Come in," because what else do you say? What else do you do when the man you loved for 3 years and grieved for 5 years shows up at your door with a family? You say, Come in, you put the kettle on. You try to keep your hand steady. I put the kettle on, and I tried very hard to keep my hand steady. We sat in my kitchen. Anna kept the little girl on her lap. The girl's name was Mia. She was 3 years old. She was quiet and watchful, like children sometimes are in strange places. She looked around at my kitchen. She looked at my paintings on the wall. She pointed at one and made a small sound of interest. She was adorable. Marcus talked for a long time. He told me everything. 5 years ago, he had been in contact with Anna for several months before he left. She was someone he had known before he met me. When we were together, he had reconnected with her. He had not planned to leave the way he did. He said he panicked. He said he was scared, and he made a terrible choice. He looked at the table when he said it. He said he and Anna had gotten together after he left. They had moved to another city. Mia was born 3 years ago. He said things with Anna had been complicated, that they had struggled, but they were together. He said the reason he had come back was not to get me back. He said he came back because he needed to apologize. He said he had owed me that for 5 years. I listened to all of it without speaking. When he finished, I was quiet for a long time. The kettle had boiled, and I had poured tea, and nobody was drinking it. Mia had fallen asleep on Anna's lap. The kitchen was very quiet. I looked at Marcus, and I thought about everything I had felt in the 5 years since he left. The grief, the anger, the confusion, the long, slow recovery. I said, Marcus, I said after that, I spent 3 more years putting myself back together. I said I had good days and bad days, and I had people who helped me, and I got through it. I said I was okay now. I said I had someone in my life who was kind and good and who treated me the way I deserved to be treated. Marcus nodded. He looked like he had expected this. He looked like hearing it still hurt him. Not because I wanted him to suffer, but because what he did had real consequences. 5 years of consequences. He needed to know that. He said he was glad I was okay. He said he was genuinely glad. He looked like he meant it. I looked at Anna. She had been very quiet the whole time. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who was also doing her best. Like a woman who was raising a child and managing a complicated situation and had agreed to come here because it was the right thing, even though it was very hard. I had spent 5 years being angry at her in my head, sitting across from her. I found I could not sustain that anger anymore. I said to Anna, I am sorry this has been difficult. She looked up at me. Her eyes were sad. She said, thank you. She said she was sorry too. She said she knew what Marcus had done to me, and she had always felt it was wrong. She said she was glad he was finally here to say it properly. There was something honest in the way she said it. Mia woke up just then. She looked at me with those big, dark eyes. Then she reached out toward the painting on the wall behind me. She made that small sound again. I looked at the painting. It was a painting I had made last year, blue and gold. She was pointing at the gold part. I looked back at her. I said, do you like that? She nodded very seriously. She was 3 years old, and she nodded very seriously. I almost laughed. Marcus and Anna stayed for about an hour. When they got up to leave, Mia took my hand at the door, very naturally, like small children do. She looked up at me and said, bye-bye. I looked down at her. My throat felt tight. She smiled. She had Marcus's smile too. Of course she did. After they left, I sat down in my kitchen for a long time. I did not cry. I had used up all my Marcus tears years ago, like weather passing through. The strange, heavy feeling of seeing him again, of seeing his family, of understanding finally and completely that chapter of my life was truly over. Just completely. I thought about the 3 years with Marcus, the good parts, the Sunday pancakes and the Thursday films, and the long Saturday walks. I let myself think about those things without pain for the first time. They had happened. They had been real. They had been good. And then they had ended, and I had survived the ending, and I was someone different now. Someone who knew her own strength because she had needed it. I picked up my phone and called Tom. When he answered, I said, "Can you come over tonight?" He said, "Of course." He said, "Is everything okay?" I said, "Not quite yet, but it will be." He said, "Okay." He said he would bring food. He said he would be there in an hour. He did not ask 100 questions. He just said he would be there. And he was always there. Tom came over, and I told him everything. He sat across from me at the kitchen table. He listened to the whole story. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I think I actually am." He reached across the table and took my hand. He held it for a long time, without saying anything. That was more than enough. That night after Tom left, I picked up a brush and started a new painting. My hands just moved. After an hour, I looked at what I had made. It was a painting of a door. With light coming through from the other side, it was not a door I had ever seen in real life, but it felt completely familiar, like I had been painting toward it for a long time, without knowing it. I lay there for a while before getting up. I thought about Marcus. I thought about the 5 years. I thought about the grief and the anger and the slow rebuilding. Then I thought about Tom, about the kettle he always put on without being asked, about the way he remembered small things I had mentioned weeks before, about the steadiness of him, the beautiful ordinary steadiness. It teaches you what you are made of. Marcus had been exciting and unpredictable. Part of me had loved that. But excitement and unpredictability had also meant disappearing without a word and leaving me with nothing but questions. I did not need that anymore. I had learned what I actually needed. I needed someone who put on the kettle without being asked. I needed Biscuit and Tom and Wednesday painting class. 6 months after Marcus's visit, Tom asked me to move in with him. I said yes. I did not hesitate. We found an apartment together, a real apartment, with good light for painting, with a kitchen big enough for 2 people to cook together without bumping into each other, with space for all of Tom's books and all of my canvases. We moved in on a Saturday in February. We ate takeout on the floor of the new apartment, surrounded by boxes, and Biscuit kept stealing pieces of my noodles when I looked away. We have been living together for 1 year now. I still paint on weekends. Tom makes coffee and sits near me while I work. He does not talk much when I am painting. He just reads his book and occasionally brings me something to drink. He is exactly the kind of quiet, consistent presence I needed and did not know I needed until I had been without it for a long time. He is the correct answer to every question. I used to stay up, turning over at 2 in the morning. Marcus sent me a message a few months after his visit. He said he hoped I was well. He said he and Anna were trying to make things work. He said Mia was doing well and had just started learning to swim. He said he was glad we had talked. I replied simply. I said I was glad too. I said I hoped he found peace. Some conversations have a natural ending. That one did. I closed the app and went to make dinner, and I did not think about Marcus again. There are people who come into your life and break something in you. And then there are people who come into your life and quietly help you repair it. Marcus was the first kind. Tom is the second kind. I used to think that the breaking was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Now I think the breaking was just the part of the story that came before the repair. Both parts were necessary. You cannot have the second without the first. My name is Lena. I am 32 years old. I live with a man who is steady and kind. I have an apartment with good light. I paint on weekends. I sleep well most nights. My life is not what I imagined when I was 24 and in love with Marcus, but it is better, in ways that matter more, in ways that last longer, in ways I had to lose everything to understand. Not even for the life I thought I was going to have, especially not for that. There is one more thing I want to say about all of this. About the years after Marcus and before Tom. About the long middle section of the story that is not dramatic but is the most important part. During those years, I learned to be my own company. This sounds like a small thing. It is not a small thing. When you have been with someone and then they are gone, you suddenly have to be alone in a way you had forgotten, alone in the evenings, alone on weekends. I had to relearn how to be a person by myself, how to fill time, not with distraction, but with actual living. I started walking every morning before work, just 20 minutes, the same route every day at first. I found streets I had never been on. Even though I had lived in this neighborhood for 3 years, I found a small square with a bench and a tree and a view of the old part of the city. I started sitting there on the bench for a few minutes each morning, just sitting, just breathing, just being in that square with the tree. I read more than I had in years. I had stopped reading when I was with Marcus. Not because of him exactly, but because I had filled my time with us, and there was no room left for books. Now, I had room. I read slowly. I reread books I had loved as a student. I found new ones. I joined the small library near my apartment, and the librarian there started to recommend things to me. She knew my taste after about a month. She always had something waiting when I came in. I cooked for myself properly. Not just toast and soup, but real food. I bought vegetables and learned recipes from a cookbook I found at the market. I made mistakes and ate them anyway. I made things that surprised me. I invited Clara to dinner once a week, and she always said it was wonderful even when it was not. But sometimes it really was. I made a slow-cooked chicken dish that even I knew was excellent. I know they are small things, but they made up the material of a life I was building for myself, a life that did not depend on anyone else to be meaningful. By the time Tom arrived, I was not looking for someone to make my life full. I already had a full life. I was looking for someone to add to it. That is a completely different thing, and it changes everything. Tom added to my life without needing to fill it. He brought biscuit and steady company and good conversation and the particular comfort of someone who would always tell you the truth gently. He brought his quiet patience and his correct answers, and the way he made the bed every morning, even on his days off. Small things, the right things. My mother asked me once if I was happy. This was about 6 months after Tom and I moved in together. I thought about it for a moment. I said yes. I said it without qualification, just yes. My mother smiled. She said, "You sound like a woman who knows what she is saying." She was right. I knew exactly what I was saying. I had earned the right to say it, simply. My name is Lena. I am 32 years old. I paint on weekends. I walk every morning. I sit on a bench in a small square with a tree and a view of the old city. I go home to Tom and Biscuit and a kitchen where we cook together without bumping into each other. I sleep well. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. It took losing everything I thought I wanted to find everything I actually needed. I would do it again. I want to tell you one more thing about Tom. He proposed to me on a Sunday morning in March. We were in our apartment. I was still in my pajamas. He was making coffee. He turned around from the counter and said, "Lena, I have something to ask you." He had a ring in his hand, a simple gold ring with a small stone. He said, "I did not know which one you would like, so I went to the shop and I told the woman I needed a ring for someone who was very real, and I got this one. She said this was for a real person." He said, "That seemed right." I said it standing in my pajamas with my hair uncombed in our kitchen in March. He put the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly. He said he had measured my finger while I was sleeping, which sounded much more strange out loud than in his head. We both laughed. We stood in the kitchen and laughed for a while. Then I put my arms around him and said thank you. He said, "For what?" I said, "For being exactly who you are." He said that was the easiest thing he had ever been asked to do. We got married in October. A small wedding, 20 people. Clara was my person at the front. Biscuit was not allowed in the venue, but Clara snuck a photo of him in her bag and showed it to me right before I walked in. And I laughed, and that is why in every photo from the ceremony, because of a photo of a dog that was not allowed to attend his own parents' wedding. My name is Lena. I am now 32 years old and married to Tom. I work in marketing. I paint on weekends. I walk every morning. I sit on my bench in the little square and watch the day begin. I have a life that I built from the pieces of a harder time, and I am proud of that, not in a loud way, in the quiet way that is deeper.